friends to friends, right? So I'm very, very happy that you're here, here participating here with us. We have an awesome guest here today. I'm going to introduce Rustan here in a minute, but just before I do that, if you're not here with us on AirMeet, if you're watching, you might be watching this from YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, wherever you are. I want to make a thank you for Rafael Del Nero. So if you're watching this on Rafael Del Nero channel and you're like, who is this guy in Rafael Del Nero channel? Yeah, so Rafael's a good friend and he decided to stream out this whole conversation here on his channel. So thanks a lot, Rafael, for doing this. So, come here, join us. I just tweeted the link where you can participate here with us. And so let me just kind of say hello. We have lots of people here with us. So let me kind of say some names here. So, hey, Leandro. Hey, Rafael. Hey, Maroni. Hey, Flaviano. Hey, Charlie. So lots of people here. Say hello in the chat, right? Tell us where you're from, so we can start having this conversation. And I'm just gonna take a look here. I'm quickly gonna connect to all the chats, right? So I can participate in the chat on YouTube and everything else. So wherever you are, say hello. We want to make this very, very interactive. So we want to hear your questions. So send us your questions. And without further ado, let me introduce this good friend of mine. And okay, so how do they? Okay, so let me introduce this good friend of mine. So Rustan, how do I say this? Mehandarov. You know?
Yeah, almost. Yes. Yes. Well, my name is Rustam Mehandarov. So it's great pleasure to be here. And hello to everyone watching us wherever you are. I mean, both geographically and whichever platform you're using. Hello to everyone.
That's great. So Rustan is a international speaker. He just run an awesome event in Oslo this week, right? Rustan, was that a good event?
Yeah, it was great. We had a lot of fun content, fun discussions and all this kind of thing. So it's been really fun. I mean, I do quite a few things here for the community. So now I run one of the GDG chapters, like Google Developer Groups for Cloud here in Oslo right now, and I'm also helping a little bit for the GDG Oslo. So the two different GDG chapters, and also we do some other stuff as well. So it's really fun to be part of community. I mean, and well, obviously I'm quite a bit speaking and participating a lot in the world of Java as well. So conferences out there and meetups and things, and it's always fun to talk about something new, something exciting, and it's great.
That's great. So Flaviano is saying hi. Yeah, hey, hello, Flaviano. So yeah, so now I have the chat from YouTube configured here. So if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, say hello in the chat, right? So you know that you're participating here with us. So Rustan, let me start. So we have you have a talk next week on the development conference, right? Where you're going to talk about the modern software development. And I think you're going to be specific on Java, right? And you're going to talk about challenges and what we can see in the future. So, so can you kind of start with a generic question here? What can we call about the modern software development? Like what's the old development process, right? So what's going on right now that we can call it modern?
Well, it's a good question. Well, this talk that we're going to be doing, so it's going to be me and a colleague of mine. So we work together, and we've done quite a few talks together throughout times. And very often those talks end up in the world of microservices, Java, microprofile, and things like that in one way or another. So this talk we're going to do kind of, it's going to be in the same direction. But I mean, the question is, what is modern? So modern can be different things, right? One thing you can think of, kind of the obvious thing that we're we've heard a lot about, and we're going to try not to speak too much about it, is this thing, the wave that we had a few years back, where we were like, everyone was splitting up the monoliths, right? Everyone had to split the monolith into microservices, and everyone had to talk about it. So this is, you can somehow call one of the ways to modernize apps. But the thing we really want to talk about, or going to talk about, is more of a development of cloud native applications. So splitting up the monolith and microservices and all those things is just a tiny little piece of the whole thing, because, well, obviously, one of the things that you want to do when you create a cloud native apps is kind of to make it loosely coupled, and that's where the microservices and all these things come in, right? So what we do, we start with a simple piece of code, a logic. So just a tiny little bit. I mean, on purpose, we keep it very simple. So I think in total, it's actually 4 lines of Java that does some magic, and then we go all the way through this journey of making it available to everyone. Because, I mean, we as developers, we love writing code, but usually we do write it for a reason, right? I mean, it's not, I mean, one thing is just, it's okay, it's fun to write, it's fun to experiment with things, it's fun to develop things and all these things, but usually there is a meaning to that, right? There is there is a idea to make something available to someone. It can be your customers, it can be your users, it can be just like, the world, whatever, it can be different things. But in reality, you write the code to make it available to someone. So we go through this whole process, and we kind of go past that step where we'd like, I don't know, when I started working, when I started my kind of career, probably around 15, 16 years ago, it was a different world, right? You would just write your applications, you would run them locally, you would get hold of a server, you will install operating system on it, you will install application server on it, you'll install a bunch of things on it, and then you would deploy our application, and you would have like a list of instructions how to install it. And then at some point you would just chuck it over to the operations teams and just say, good luck, I'm done, see you when I see you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And
follow these steps here, and maybe it's going to work.
And maybe it's going to work. Exactly, right? And this is kind of what I would say a bit like, old way of developing stuff. So the modern way is creating cloud native applications, but my claim is that we don't have to have it running on the cloud to get benefits from it. So the point is that you can do a lot of things that normal to do or expected to do with cloud native applications, but you can still run on-prem. So you can still run on your own things, but you still get these things like containerization, you get this loose coupling, you get, observability, fault tolerance, all those things that are normal to have. And then in this kind of modern application world, but you still will get a lot of gain from even just running things on-prem.
Right. Yeah, there's a question here from Flaviano that it fits exactly what you're talking about here. And he says, right, so he was working before with Spring Cloud, but for an internal solution, right? So he had no need for scale, right? Exactly. I think he didn't notice that he needed. But now he's working on AWS, right? So he's actually working on things in the cloud. And now he's thinking about scale for the first time, right? So and how important it is. So he believes that now that he's thinking about scale, that's when he's doing modern software development. So you think that's this whole scalability, because the reality is that scalability ballooned, right, in the last few years, right? Because in the past, our requirements were kind of smaller. You just kind of upgrade your server. That's all you needed, right? Now we have this systems that require like parallel servers and parallel microservices and everything. So the scale got a lot bigger those days, right? So you think that scalability is like one of the main drive for this modern developments?
I would say very often it is, because it's kind of this is something that's is easy to sell in a way, right? It's easy to talk about and kind of brag about it. Say, hey, you know what? I've built this really cool application. It can scale to like going from 0 miles per hour or kilometers an hour or whatever you measure the speed into 200 in no time, and just it's so scalable and amazing and fantastic. But and it is true. It is for sure true. And what Fabiano is saying is this thing with scalability is definitely one of the things. But again, my claim is that usually you would kind of with the scalability and everything, usually end up speaking a lot about containers. And containers is, yes, they're an important part of that. But containers give you also some other things that I would call kind of modern app, part of this modern app development, or Java app development, or whatever language you would be using app development. It is this part of reproducible builds and your reproducible deployments. Because we developers are very famous for this. Unfortunately, I would say probably we're famous for this works on my machine kind of thing, right? If somebody complains about something and you just say, you know what, yeah, well, it just works on my machine, so not my problem, kind of, sometimes you might hear something along those lines. And I would say is that this part of developing modern applications is actually putting them into containers is also this thing that removes or eliminates this thing of working on my machine. Because if I have a container, and it doesn't have to be Docker, but any containers, there are different options and everything. But typically, people would often put they would say Docker and container is the same thing, but it doesn't have to. But that's another story. So whatever you're using for containers, it would give you this ability to make your builds and your deployments reproducible. Because back in the old days, when you would write a Word document with 1,500 steps to do it, and those steps might be true for your machine, but would be different from another machine and another and another and another. But when you do things in containers, as long as you're sticking to same architecture, like CPU architecture and stuff, you will be pretty much, chances that it will go south are very much, much, much smaller than with just like everything different, different operating system, different hardware, different everything, right?
Right. Yeah, actually, there's a nice story when I used to speak about this with Edson Yanaga, right? He would always tell the story of when he was talking to a customer that he learned this whole thing about the working on my machine many years ago when he was working with a customer, and the customer called him and said, "I don't know what the problem is because it's working on my machine." And so his customer said, "I don't want you to work on your machine. I want you to work on my machine."
Exactly, right? You're getting paid to make it work on my machine, not yours.
So that's when, and that's a reality, right? That's and today with all these cloud things, all the possibilities. So this week we had, for example, a conversation with Tatiani from Jelastic, right? And they have 100 data centers around the world, right? So it's like, if I want to run my stuff, I need to be able to run in any of those places, right? Not only on my computer at all, right? So you think that the biggest thing for the modern software development is this whole idea of reproduce. You said reproduce the builds, but actually it's not only the builds, right? It's reproducing everything, right? So you can
deployments, builds, and all those things. But yes, it's a part of it. So. I would say there are several things to it because, I talked to someone just recently, just like an hour ago or so, and when we talked about this thing about the cloud native and what it actually means, and we just ended up talking about that. It wasn't really the main topic of the whole thing, but we ended up talking about that. And what he mentioned was that. One of the interesting aspects of cloud native is that you somehow, with this cloud thing, you have applications that are more robust and built for a little bit of unpredictable behavior, because now everything is distributed. You have a lot of moving parts. You have microservices. You have a mesh in between them. You have a network in between all that. You have, different providers, different, a lot of things are different, right? So you have a lot of variables here. So now you're actually, in a way, forced to build something that would take, that would handle this and embrace this unpredictable behavior, and actually force you make more robust applications. So I would say this is also a part of developing a modern applications. So containerization is one of them. Loose coupling is one of them, because loose coupling is one of those things that will give you, for instance, easy to change little parts of it, right? So think of it as a house or something built out of Lego pieces. And, when it's tiny, small Lego pieces, you can easily pick one piece and replace it with some other piece of another color, another size, another something, and it would still be a house and still would have the same shape and everything. As opposed to this old way of doing that, where we would have a huge monolith where everything was glued together, and then you would have to kind of chisel it out and break it off, and then, at some point you would not have a house. You will have to rebuild the whole thing over again. So I would say this is also part. So there are a few things with modern applications, or modernizing them, and probably different people would put stress on different things, but I think the essence would be the same. Because if you look at the definition of cloud, what Cloud Native Foundation, CNCF, actually says about cloud native, you will see all those things. You will see kind of a little piece. Just Google it. You will find, most likely what you will find as a first hit would be a markdown file on their GitHub repository, where actually the definition is like the first thing you will see there. And what you will see there is like going to be three things. It's going to be like what they want it to be. So they're talking about scalable applications. So like what's been mentioned already. They're talking about ability to run on various shapes and sizes of a cloud. So, public, private cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, all of those things. Right. But then also they talk about why would you want to do that? These things that I've mentioned, like the time to market, resilience, and, all those things. And they also talk about how you may achieve that. And that is this thing that we've also been talking about, right? Microservices, API management, a little bit different architecture to kind of build for that. Mesh, all those kind of things that make it possible, make it a reality, this really nice theory of making scalable applications that run out there somewhere. But again, they don't have to run on the cloud. They can still run on-prem and be cloud native.
Okay, that's awesome. So a more Java-related question: do you think that Java in the Java ecosystem is ready, or considering the modern software development process, where do you think Java fits into this? Is this Java ready for it? It's more or less. It's like not very good. So how's Java following this whole thing?
I think it does, and I think it does even more with latest changes or latest things that have been done in Java. I mean, this starting from now, it's becoming some time back, but starting with this release cycles that are happening much more often with new features and fixes and everything. That's one thing. And the other there is a lot of things inside the language that made it possible. And then also you have a bunch of frameworks or specifications sometimes even that make it cloud native friendly, or like microservices friendly. So I've mentioned already microprofile, which is one way of it's a funny thing. It's a specification. It's not an implementation, because it's up to really those that choose to support it, and that's quite a few of the companies and communities out there that support it. It's up to them to actually implement that spec. So it's basically a collection of things that make it possible or make it easier to run on in the cloud as a microservices. But then you have also Micronaut, you have Spring Boot, you have other ones that kind of are in the same. They work in a different way, but they're kind of in the same. They're doing the same job of making it cloud native or making it possible to deploy in small containers and everything. Because I mean, what, for instance, MicroProfile does, it has like things to handle JSON. So for instance, you would be doing like REST client thing would be written for you, so you don't have to write this, or you don't have to write handling HTTP requests and everything, and JSON parsing and all those things. Because I mean, it can be fun to write it once. It can be fun to write it maybe twice, but after like 3-4 times, it's not really fun anymore. And it's like full of bugs possibly, and full of like things that you would like to refactor and everything. But here you just have libraries that help you with that, right? And then you just pull them in, you just annotate your code, and then you're golden, right? You're good to go. So I definitely think Java has very good support for creating cloud native applications. I mean, there are other languages for that as well, but the thing I really like with Java, and I kind of sometimes lack in when I look at the other languages and try to look for similar things, is this really nice ecosystem of ability to build things and deploy things and test things, and all those libraries that make your enterprise life easier, right? Like because I work in a consultancy company, I work as a developer, I work as an architect and everything. And when I have to, when the new customer asks me to do something, it's much easier for me to know that, okay, well, I can just pull in Maven, I can pull in a bunch of dependencies, I just compile and build the whole thing, and I will have a deployable package that I don't have to think about, and I can just check into a container and put it out there. While with some other languages, I would kind of have to think like, oh, how do I do this thing? How do I install other packages or third library things? How do I build it? Sometimes it's just not being used to that specific platform, but sometimes it's actually just a lacking thing. So what I think Java has is this really good support for especially some things that you need in the enterprise world, where you would have like a bigger solutions, bigger systems, and you would need to have a bit more control, a bit more kind of rigidness in that sense.
Right. That's good. Okay, so let me kind of switch this. So before I switch on another topic here, just want to say, if you're watching us, whatever you're watching us, send your questions here on the chat. Right, type in the chat. Even if you don't have questions, just say where you're from in the chat, so we can have a conversation here. Now, Rustan, one thing that we're always trying to focus here is in terms of career, right? So, how we can actually become better developers and how we can improve our career in this regard. So, what do you think is the right now for the software developer? What do you think are the top, the most important skills that a software developer should have to like fit right into the modern software development process and actually going forward, right? So what do you expect to be like the significant skill for our career going forward?
That's a good question, because the first answer that pops in my head might sound a little bit kind of cliche kind of answer, but I think it's still a very important thing, and it's ability and willingness to change and to learn, because I think it's a very it's IT world is changing fast, and it's changing fast to something new, but it's not always necessarily totally new things. It's sometimes, or quite often actually, it's a little bit old things, but just repackaged in a little bit different way. So that means that you need to understand what they actually want from you, and you cannot just, I think one of the most important kind of properties or most of skills that you should have is this ability to say, hey, oh, this is new. I haven't seen that before, but I have this curiosity and drive to actually understand and learn a little bit about it and see if it actually fits into whatever I'm doing or not. And, be open-minded and willing to learn things. I think that's one of these things. And the other thing is also to experiment with things and just like test it out and see. But that goes again under the category of learning new stuff and getting more hands-on experience on different things, because new things are going. I mean, it's not just a question if; it's going to just a question of when the new crazy cool concept of whatever that might be will be happening in IT, and everybody will start talking about it, and then you should have the ability to actually understand what is it, what's behind it, and how can that help me what I'm doing, or if it can't help me.
Right. So one of the questions we get a lot is that, you just said that, you got to learn and be ready and be open to learn new things and all that. And so a lot of people are like, but we're over a helmet. I mean, there's so many different things to learn. There's so many different things to experiment, so many different things to try. But I like it that you mentioned here, you said, when you hear about something, you learn a little bit, right? So, and that's different, because it's not about learning everything that shows up and going deep on everything, because we never have the time. So for you, what is this little bit that you have to learn about, right? So, you hear about a new technology, you hear about something that sounds interesting. How much is a little bit, right? How much you should experiment to get yourself into and to kind of start?
I think that that's also a very good question, but I also think that this will what I'm going to say now might work for someone else or might not work for someone else, because it might depend on experience and the way you work and the way you think and everything. But for me, would be the little thing would be to try to understand what it is, like a little bit behind the, call it architecture, call it like building blocks, call it whatever you want, but like, what is it made of, and what is it trying to solve? So kind of the business need that you are trying to solve, or what is you can also call it value proposition in a way, right? So you learn this, there is a new cool library. Okay, fine, whatever that library is, that's really, really nice. Tell me, what is it? What is it built of, and what is trying to solve? Oh, okay, this is a web component library. Okay, cool. Then I know what it is. Or, oh, well, this is a kind of server side, something that will handle, gRPC protocol up and down and encrypt things. Okay, cool. So try to understand what it is and what it's trying to solve will give you a lot. With a little bit of experience, with a little bit of like playing around with the other things, it will give you a very good idea if that might be useful for you right now, or just be in the back of your head somewhere and pop up in the right moment when somebody asks you the right questions about the right, about something that particular thing that you saw a little bit earlier might help to solve.
I've heard in the past this being described as, you learn something, then you categorize it, right? So that, like you just did, right? Say, oh, that's a web component. So now you put that thing in the category of web component. So you can even talk about it, right? Because now you understand at least what it is, right? And so then when the problem that thing solves shows up in your life, in your project, in your friend's project, or in a company you want to work for, then you can say, okay, so that is that thing. Let me go deeper and understand that. And I think this is so important, right? So everyone who's watching us here, it's so important that you see when you have, top level professional developers like Rustan is here, because it's not about learning everything, guys. It's not about, having to be expert in everything, because trying to be an expert in everything, trying to go deep in absolutely everything, it would destroy your career, because you're never going to be able to do anything in practical for really, right?
Actually, funny story there. I mean, that's how you often I mean, I'm not going to say it's happening all the time, but it happens sometimes. It's just to build under the thing that you mentioned, just to kind of to underline that point, is that you often see junior developers when you get into, because I mean, the projects that sometimes we work on are really big. I mean, it's like it can be, I don't know, 400,000 lines of code, like Java code, 500,000. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's not just a tiny little hello world. It's not a tiny microservice or anything. It's like huge things. And then you get the junior developers and you say, hey, welcome to the team. And we do this onboarding and everything. And then now we're going to give you a tiny little, sometimes it happens like that, right? You just say, now we're going to give you a tiny little bug that you can fix, so you'll learn a little bit about the system. And sometimes what you hear is something along the lines, something like, oh, yeah, sure, but give me a half a day. I'll just read the code and understand everything, and I'll be able to fix it in like no time and everything. And then you're just kind of, sometimes you just try to stop them, and sometimes you just give them that half a day and just make them realize that it's not really possible, because it is when you've experienced, when you've been there, when you've kind of felt it in a way, sometimes you just learn just enough, or you search and you understand just enough of that huge system to solve that problem, and you don't do this thing learn like understanding and reading it from the first file to the last line of the last file, because this is kind of sometimes how people are taught at the universities and everything, to kind of try to understand everything, to have this kind of theoretical approach to things. But in reality, it's not working fully like that. So you will learn much more about the system, but the first thing you're going to fix, or your first meeting with the system, you will not be able to read 500,000 lines of code, understand everything, and actually remember where things is going to be. I mean, if you do that, I would be deeply, deeply impressed. But most of the people would not be able to do that. Give me 500,000 lines of code, I wouldn't be able to remember.
Right.
Just like, oh, this is file abc.java on line 239. It's not going to happen. So I think this is an important thing here as well. Just enough to be able to solve a problem, just enough. But then don't stop there. Kind of continue learning, but just do it at small increments, because it will be much more easy to do than just these huge jumps that are kind of almost physically impossible for humans to do. But it kind of feels that you should be able to do that.
Right. And Rustan, I'm not sure right now, but you've been a consultant, right? So you work as a consultant. Yeah, right. Yeah. So consultants usually have this really big problem that you have to jump in a project, right? So people hire you, and so you enter the project, they expect like that you have results immediately, right? So
Yes.
So how do you do this? How do you get in the project and then you can be immediately productive, or you can immediately bring value to the company that's hiring you? Do you have any tricks or any things that you that any practice that you do, so you can? Because I think this is really important for people to, when we join a project, especially nowadays, right? It's very rare that we start a project from scratch, right? We always get into a project already going on. So how do we do this? How do we get into an existing project and we immediately know where we are, and we're trying to able to navigate, we start able to add value to projects?
It's yet another good question, because it's kind of funny how it works. Because when people hire you as a consultant, they expect you to come in and solve the problems they've had and the systems they've built over many, many years.
Right.
And they expect you to understand everything it does in, just matter of whatever, minutes, hours, something like that, in worst case hours, so you kind of expect you to learn things in just like a flip of a switch, and then actually contribute to that. So it's very, very good point what you're saying. And what I usually do is I try to, again, like I did with the other things, I try to understand the business needs and what it is actually first trying to solve, and then looking at the high level architecture and high level kind of technical side of it. What is it? Is it on-prem app? Is it like a hybrid app? It is what kind of architecture it's running on, what kind of software it uses, what kind of products and things like that. So, but then that's kind of regular thing. Like probably everybody would go that way. But what I also do is to ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask a lot of questions, and I ask a lot of possibly simple questions, but so possibly just like more advanced questions. But I ask a lot of them, and I try to understand. And then when you ask something and people explain it to you, they will explain it in their words, and it doesn't mean that it will be the same for you. So I usually kind of try to digest it and repeat it so you said that you're doing this, that is doing this and that and blah blah in this way, is that correct? And then they would say, yeah, well, almost, but and so on, and then you get to understand much more about it. Another thing what I usually love doing, I try to understand. It's probably maybe a bit more about how I work personally, but I'm pretty sure there should be more people like that out there. If not, I don't expect everyone to do that, but I would expect a lot of people still being along those lines. And I try to understand how things work. So, when someone gives you something, some kind of whatever equipment, motor, whatever it can be, the thing that you cannot look inside, I usually try to at least mentally pull it apart and try to understand how it actually works before trying to solve it. Because then it will help me a lot I might spend a little bit more time in the beginning trying to understand how it works, but it will give me a lot more a reasonable kind of help to understand it better and to actually come up with the better solutions when later, because you have sometimes you see that people just focus on their little piece and just solve it. And I know this is kind of also goes with what I said, just learning just enough to solve the problem and everything. But then at some point you need to switch gears, and you need to actually try to understand what's around it and what is it made of, and how it works inside, and what is it both on business and technical perspective. Because sometimes you will be asked to solve a problem that is not necessarily a problem. Customer may come to you and say, you know what, we want to build doors with round knobs. And then you would be like, but why? All the other knobs are squared and you can push on them, but this one is just round. And why do you want the round ones? And then they would say something, I don't know, when we walk by, it just kind of shines the light on it and it just blinds us or something. So they're actually trying to solve a totally different problem by asking you to do things. Or, more realistic example, not doorknobs, but like, buttons, they want you to add a button somewhere in the solution to do some specific thing. And then you would ask, like, why do you really want that button? And then they would come up with a really possibly strange, I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it can be strange solution to a totally different problem. But then as a consultant, you have to have this ability to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And, you have to be respectful. You have to understand that people have spent much more time on this than maybe you have done, because you have just come in or you've been to this project a shorter period of time. But then you should, nicely try to ask, like, have you considered that might be a better solution doing this and that? And what do you think about if we do it this way instead? And don't be afraid to kind of ask, but in a nice and polite and respectful way, but try to ask a totally different if a totally different solution would be okay with that. Because that's a little bit of a consultant. Your job is not just to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, or whatever, just do it, but actually think to try to solve it in the best possible way for whoever asks you to solve that, right?
Right. Yeah, and this is really really valid. There's a question here from Flaviano that I'm not that's he's asking for a friend. I'll talk about this in a minute, but how do you like being? I'm just kind of a question because I think that every develop not maybe not every developer, right? But I think that it is a very very good path for developers, especially people that want to specialize into more specific things, right? I really think that going into some kind of consultancy or freelance kind of thing, I think it's an awesome way, right? Because when you try to specialize in something, it's very rare that you have one company that's going to say yes, you can work on this all the time, right? So let's say performance, for example. If you're very good at performance, right, it's not going to be like one company. Yes, okay, come here and you're just going to be an expert in performance in our company. But if you have like 3, 5, 10 companies that then have that need, right, and then you can work on all these. So I really think that this is an awesome path. So how do you see your role as a consultant? Do you like to work for different companies? Do you prefer to like just work for one project? How do you see that for developers in general?
I say that that part is very, very dependent on what you want as like your personal needs and personal goals and personal, things that you want to achieve, and they might change. It's not just going to be the same for you all the time. It might change with time as well. But I think I agree with you. I think it is a very good way of learning stuff, and it's also a very good way of. I mean, I enjoy this thing that you can switch project and switch things that you're working without actually switching your colleagues in a way. So you can actually just say, I've worked for this private sector company that is doing something, and I kind of feel like, I've done my things and I've learned a lot of things, but now I want to see how it is to work in a totally different field, and I would like to see how it is to work for a public company, for example, or public whatever, some kind of ministry or whatever it might be, and then you can just relatively, I mean, of course, it's not just you can just switch and jump around as much as you want whenever you want. Obviously, there are you have to think about like things and everything, but you can do that, and it's much easier to do when you're sitting in a specific kind of product company or specific kind of job description and company where it's not that easy. I mean, to do that, you will probably need to, most likely you'll need to switch jobs. And with a consultancy, you don't have to. But then I would also say that when you look for consultancy companies, also look for companies that care about you. And that care about you as a person, as a developer, care about your personal development so that you actually learn about things. Because, the worst case scenario would be that you would, the all absolute worst, probably the scenario would be to kind of end up in a company that is very interested in your billing hours, but nothing else. And they kind of really, really nice because they will kind of bill for you and then, take the diff and give you money, and that's it. And then you will kind of end up in a place where you don't learn much, and you kind of, it's not going to be good. Since we're talking about career development and everything, things like that, I would say be aware of that, and just most of the companies are not going to be like that. But I'm just mentioning that can be the worst kind of case scenario as well, right? So looking for companies that care, that you learn stuff, that you actually feel well and that you enjoy going to work every day. That is a very, very important thing that is kind of not often talked about, because most of the cases would be like, hey, come to us, we have so cool technology, or hey, come to us, we have this really awesome thing. But knowledge sharing and personal development is also very, very important things. Just look for that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we can talk a little bit. If we get to this sharing and community, like maybe we need like a 5-hour.
Yes.
All right. So maybe we can talk a little bit about this. But let's go to Flaviano's question here.
Right.
And he's asking for a friend because his friend is moving from a like a mid-level position to a senior position in another company, right?
Mhm.
So, do you have any hints about, how do I position myself as a senior? What are the things that I know if I'm for me to hit the ground running? What is a senior in a company, right? So how do I position myself? How do I behave? Does it change if I was a mid-level developer yesterday and I'm a senior today? Do I have to change anything?
I would say so, but it's a lot of good questions coming
Yeah,
in.
maybe,
So
maybe,
it's
maybe
amazing.
yeah, maybe what's expected from a senior. I think that could be a good way of phrasing that, right? So what do you think is expected from a senior when
I
he
would
enters the
say
company?
the first thing that comes to my mind is to have this understanding of the business. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as a dev, maybe junior or mid-level developer, maybe you don't care much about the business stuff, or sometimes you might call it the politics in a way, or something like that. But then you would be more focused, which library to choose, and what how to develop things and the algorithm and stuff. And this is an important part, but with seniority comes several things. So one of them is obviously an experience, so you know when to put things together. So the technical part, right? So that's cool. And I'm sure that with some years of experience and working and everything, you gain that easily. But sometimes you don't think much about this business part. I mean, so the business needs and business requirements of an application. And I would say that is one of this senior job thing. So, like, if you talk about architecture, like thinking of uh, junior developers, mid-level developers would be more into the application architecture, while a bit more senior ones would be more on kind of high-level architecture, even enterprise architecture, looking at more how it fits inside the company and what it does, and what things are what moving parts it might have, and how it will impact other systems, and all these kind of things that are not just bits and bytes, but actually more kind of human part of it, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? That that a senior is expected to understand more of the company and not only the technical part, right? So, and by that means, the politics, who is there, who says, because
Mhm.
that's for me as a consultant, right? And kind of talking to the thing that you're talking before. I think the big difference when you enter in a company, for example, right? As a consultant, you can't just be, oh yeah, I'm the technical guy, I'm just going to do the technical stuff, right? You have to understand things. So we had this particular situation for a friend of mine, and he was in my company in the past, right? So we had this particular situation that this guy got into a project, and the first thing they asked, so he was new there, right? So someone just kind of asked him, hey, can you come here? We have this thing here that it would be nice if you could evaluate this thing here for us, and he did, right? So he analyzed it, the technical things, and he made like, oh yeah, I think that this should go this way and it should go that way, blah blah. And what happens is that the guy asking him to do that got that report from him and used that report to undermine the person that hired him inside the company. So actually, the guy's gonna say, why did I hire you, right? To kick me? so he was kicked out of the company like this, right? It's like, so and that's a lot of times that's a lack of understanding on on the politics and who people are, and who, right? So I think that's more expected of a senior, right? So
It is,
and
and also to understand a bit of culture. I mean, the things that I mean, I don't know, just from this little thing that you mentioned can be also pointing some things at the culture. I mean, is this actually the culture that you might want to work at, in an environment where you want to work at, where you always have to look like watch your back? Because
right, oh
someone
yeah,
just might just come in and just like sneak in with a report, and just like it's also part of being like, when we're talking about like looking for a place to be, that might be also one of the things to kind of look for as well, right?
right.
Safe environment is an important thing.
Of course, yes, of course, right. So, now one of the things that you mentioned, I think that's I would be totally remiss if I didn't use your vast knowledge on this area. That is, this whole community thing, right? So, do you think that someone more senior, if you participate in communities, if you have more better communication skills, for example, do you think that helps someone to show their seniority?
I think I actually would like to turn this around. I would like to say that as the junior developers or mid-level developers, it's actually a very, very good thing to be involved in all those things, to learn about that. So I don't want to tell you to do that to feel more senior. I just want you to do that to actually learn the skills that will kind of come natural to you at some point, that will make you be perceived as a senior. Because I mean, it doesn't really. It's this thing that it's not about you being able to say, hey, you know what, I'm a senior. It's actually about doing the right things that will make others think that you are, right? Without you kind of pushing it into their faces and just like, saying, hey, you know what, I'm a senior now. I'm So this is also an important thing. But community is a very, very good way of learning many of those skills. So as a kind of way of developing yourself and your career, and actually getting involved in communities will be a very good thing, like local communities or even international communities and things like that. It's a great learning curve. You will see a lot of different ways of solving problems that you might not have thought about, that will also contribute to your experience. You'll get to know many awesome people. Like, I mean, where would we two be without the community, and how would we have met each other? I mean, you in Brazil, me in Norway. I mean, what are the chances, right?
Right.
But we met, and met actually, well, before Corona, but we met actually relatively quite often to be on, I would say, more or less different sides of the planet, right? So these community things, they do help you a lot, but do it for the sake of community and just because you want it, and all the other things will come. That's kind of, I think,
That's awesome. Yeah, one thing I want to add. Of course, I totally agree with you that community is awesome. But one thing I want to add in terms of being a senior here, and I just want to tie back to the first thing that you start talking about here today when you said about learning, right? And I think that one big difference for me in terms of a senior and a junior is that the junior, he knows what he knows, right? And that's it, right? So he's just like this little bubble of knowledge, and he doesn't know what exists beyond that, right? So he's really confident, because I think Flaviano mentioned confidence in his talk. So the junior, it's very normal that you talk to a junior, someone just out of the university, and they're extremely confident, right? So they're like, yeah, I know everything. I can change the world, right? I'm gonna improve this whole thing, right? Because they know what they know, right? So they know that little bubble, right? And so, but when you start growing, right, then you burst that bubble and you start learning that lots of things you don't know, right? So your confidence goes to the floor, right? Because now you're like, man, I don't know anything, right? I thought I did, but I don't know anything. And I think that the senior is that person that went past that, right? Is that person that understands he doesn't know everything, right? And so go back to the first thing you said, right? He understands that he needs to understand a little bit of different things and know what they are. And the senior is that person that knows, if I need to learn that, I will learn really fast because I know what it is. I know how it connects to other things. So I have this general overview, right? So for Flaviano, if I think that would be, for me, when I'm talking to someone and he's like desperate because he doesn't know everything, I'm like, okay, so this guy needs a little bit more work to become a senior, right? So someone that understands that whole thing, for me, I think it's in a different level.
It's a very, very good point there, Bruno. It's yes, exactly that. And then it's the moment you realize that you don't know everything and you don't have all the answers is an important answer, is important point. And also, it's okay. It's actually okay, and that's a sign of maturity, I would say, to say,
Right.
hey, you know what? I don't have an answer for you. The people just, would be like, oh, but you are, whatever. You're supposed to be expert. You should be like a super. Yeah, I am. I mean, I know my stuff, but I don't have to know everything. And I will probably find an answer. Just give me a little bit of time. I mean, I'm not walking talking encyclopedia. I mean, I cannot just like look up in my library somewhere and just give you an answer. I know how to find it. I'll do that. And this point of knowing that there is a lot of things that you don't know and being humble about it is a very, very important point.
Right. That's awesome, man. All right. So actually, let me kind of bring one more topic here, because Cristiano on LinkedIn, he's saying, talk about TDC, right? TDC, right? He's one of the guys that run the event. So he's like, TDC, right? Yes. So you're going to be on TDC next week, right? And TDC is going to be, there's an awesome thing because it's going to be it's going to have like 6 international tracks, all in English. Actually, let me tell you this, something that let me just tell everyone here, like the backstage here, right? So while we're doing this, I'm receiving the message here for the people testing the simultaneous translation part, right? So
you do that, nice.
Yeah. So you're gonna do simultaneous translation for I don't, it's not gonna be for all the rooms, but for some content it's gonna be simultaneous translated, right? So yeah, so people are testing out this whole thing about the architecture, right? So we've been looking at how to do this in a good way, and so we're testing a new tool that we're going to use. So
that's
for that.
AI and cloud kind of based stuff. It's not real people doing that, or
no, it's real. Yeah, no. It's still right. Simultaneous translation today. It's still very people. It's a big people event. It's in the cloud, right? It's just not processed by a computer, I guess, right?
Awesome. That's cool.
Right, so anyway, so we're gonna have this awesome event next week, right? This is gonna be international with several tracks, and so can you tell us a little bit about your talk that you're gonna talk next week, and how that's gonna be, which track's gonna be?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did talk a little bit about it, right, already. So the idea is that we're going to be talking about what we put. So we're going to give you, I can probably say like opinionated mix of cool things that we put together that we call that we call a serverless cloud native kind of super fancy application. So what we do is, like I said in the beginning, we start with more or less 4 lines of code, and with a simple application. So with a simple piece of logic that basically we have 2 enums. So we decided to do it very simple. So we created 2 huge enums in Java, so classes. With a list of words. So one of them is adjectives and the other one is nouns. And the logic is to pick a random noun and a random adjective, put them together and return it to the user, because this is just, we just did it for the heck of it, just for fun. But there are applications for that. So like, for example, here in Norway, something similar is used as a multi-factor authenticator. So whenever you log into something, it will give you like 2 words, and you will see those 2 words on some other device, and then if you see that they're the same, then you would approve login and stuff like that, for instance, right? Or you can use it for different things like naming your Docker containers or whatever. But the point is, so we have this little bit of logic. So 4 lines of code that pick those 2 words at random and return it to the user. But then we start with that, and then we go all the way to I would say maybe calling it an old kind of monolithic application in a way, where you would just write that code, put it on the application server, make it run, and then you would just, be stopping there. But then, this modern app thing does not really stop there. So then we put it into a container, and then we make it run on a container. Then we actually also talk quite a bit about being able to change application servers and stuff within that container. But that's more of a feature of MicroProfile that we're using. So where you can just change a POM file and you just use another one, and just suddenly goes from OpenLiberty to I don't know, whatever, Wildfly or something like that, right? Just like this. So we put all that into a container, and then you're kind of sitting there and it's like, okay, fine. I've written logic. I wrote code. I have it running in a container, but it's still on my machine. So what's the point? Now I still have local host / something, and my point is to make it available for everyone. So what do I do now? Well, I put it to cloud, but what is a cloud, right? Then you have this thing of, do I just chuck it somewhere and just make it run all the time and cost me a lot of money, and then we kind of touch upon this serverless thing. And well, most of you probably have heard about that, but if you haven't, that's totally okay. Serverless does not mean no servers; it just means no management of servers in one sentence, probably. So what we do is just to make it kind of auto-manage itself. So this little thing that I was talking about of Elastic applications. So we put that there. And then we talk about a bit about what it actually means being serverless or being out there in the cloud, because you can shove an elephant into a container and make it absolutely horrifically huge and slow and very, very weird thing in a container, but it still be containerized, and it's not really cloud native, right? Because if you're writing a serverless application that is supposed to kind of spin up in a matter of very short time, like milliseconds or something, you cannot put a huge monolith in there that takes like 5 minutes to boot up, right? So we talk a bit about those things, what serverless means. That would usually mean keeping state somewhere else, so being stateless and stuff. But also we talk about a bit about choosing different application servers and what can help you to create a seamless state serverless application. So we put the whole thing at the end into a spoiler alert. So if you're gonna watching our talk, close your ears. So we're gonna put it on Quarkus and make it like spin up in from just like hundreds of milliseconds or whatever that might be for all the other app servers into a Quarkus native that will be doing it like sub-second, sub-millisecond, kind of really, really many times faster in a way. And then now we're talking serverless. Now we have application that will boot up on the first request and go from 0 containers to 1 container or 100 containers in milliseconds. And users won't even notice that your application wasn't running there all the time, right? So this kind of things is what we kind of do. And we do choose a pattern or a path, and it is opinionated. We put it on a specific cloud and we put it on specific products. We talk about microprofile, we talk about Quarkus, we talk about things. But your mileage may vary and you might be using other things, but our idea is to show you the whole idea and the way of thinking. And also our idea is to make sure that also when we were choosing things, we were also trying to make sure that all those things are at least they're open source, or there are open source alternatives available. So we talk, for instance, about Cloud Run, it's a thing on Google Cloud called Cloud Run, but it is managed thing, and it's a Google Cloud thing. But in reality, it's managed Knative, which is an open source project. And so worst case scenario, don't go into the cloud, install Knative and run it yourself. Or things like that. So we try to keep it to and we also always try to talk about the alternatives where you would avoid this vendor lock-in kind of thing, because yes, we've used something, we had to pick something to make it work. We couldn't just talk in general, because then it would be nothing you could actually see, right? But then everything we're going to say will be applicable to other clouds, other products, other things as well. Because it
looks like it's going to be a very practical talk, right? So
hopefully, I really hope so. We've done it a few places. We've done it last time we did it was actually as a workshop virtually in Istanbul, just a week ago, I think, so something like that.
Yes, Istanbul Java Day, right?
Yes. You were there as well. So it's So we were. We did it even like a kind of like a workshop, but it was more of a demo, right? Because it's hard to do it as a workshop virtually, but we hope to be able to to do it in person whenever we all will be allowed to travel and see each other in real life and everything. But or maybe we'll make something else. We've done a few things with microservices and microprofile just because we like it. Because I mean we're not really. Our aim is not to promote a specific technology, more promote kind of the knowledge and to explain people what things are and how they can be used.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. No. Next week the event's going to be very interactive, right? So that's a cool thing.
That's really awesome.
The platform, it allows people to talk and interact a lot. So that's going to be awesome. All right. Okay, so I mean we're more than an hour here, right? And I forgot to ask
so you. Fun.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you, Rustan, if you could go because I start late, right? So if you could
no, I'm good. I mean, I'm enjoying this talk, so I mean, I'm fine. It's evening here. I'm done with most of my things, so I mean, it's no problems at all. My pleasure.
All right, no problem, man. So let me ask you like one last question here, then. So is there anything that I should have asked on modern software development that I did not, that you wanna mention and you wanna get people connected with? So what did I miss?
Good question. I think now I feel like this old "do you want to be a millionaire" kind of thing. Can I ask the audience help? What do you people think? I mean, you on the stream out there on the big internet, please be quick and help me here. Yes, type something that you would like me or Bruno to answer.
Yeah, what's the last question, guys? So look,
last call.
Yeah, to give people a last chance here to ask the last question. I have one in mind. So this is the last. Actually, let me tell a little backstage story here.
Go ahead.
So Rustan is the last person in the interview process. I mean, this whole week that we're doing here, but he was actually the first I talked to, right? So because I was, thinking about what I'm gonna do this week before TDC, because I wanted to talk with speakers and coordinators of the event. I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to be. So Rustan messaged me and said, yeah, my talk was approved, right? And I said, hey, would you like to have a conversation before your talk? And he said, yeah, sure. It's okay. So now...
It's amazing, isn't it? That's fun. We did something similar, I think. When was that? Was it last autumn for the career day? And it was really fun. Yes. Yeah, so I mean, I would, it was no brainer for me to say yes. I mean, it was so much fun last time, so I enjoyed. I mean, there's a lot of good questions, good comments out from people and on the stream and from you, and it's really nice. So I mean, I would do that again.
Awesome, man, awesome. So my last question, since we're talking about here challenges and for the future and everything, right? When you look for the future, right, in terms of technologies, in terms of the way that we work together, especially now that everyone is kind of remote, and remote was proving to be a very effective thing. So what do you think is going to change in the next few years in terms of the software development career, or in terms of the skills that we need to know, even in terms of technology? When you look forward, what kind of things that you're expecting that we should be paying attention to?
Well, first is this, we talked about this thing of saying I don't know, right?
Right, yeah.
So I think this is one of the really good examples of saying we can't really say, but we can always guess, and we will probably be wrong, but don't quote us on that later. But
okay, so Flaviano changed my question a little bit to a more to the ground question. He says, so what are you studying right now to work in the future? So that's a little, so things that you don't have a customer for, but you're studying because you expect to have a customer for. So thanks, Flaviano. That might be a more specific question, or you just can answer the question too.
Okay, well, I can try. I mean, I'll see how far I'll get answering it, and feel free to kind of ask more around it. But I think what's going to happen is that there will be more possibilities for remote, because many companies in many places, I'm pretty sure it's all around the world, everywhere, were kind of skeptical to this whole working from home concept to begin with, and
Right.
there was. It wasn't that easy to get access or get accept to for people to work remote some days a week or one way or another. I think that part is going to change, because now people have realized that it actually works, and it is not as scary as they might thought it was. So I think that part will be changing, and
Yeah.
also then you need to. Sorry,
Can
yeah,
you, don't want to, no mean to interrupt your train of thought, but can
sure,
you just kind of add one comment on this? One thing that we notice, especially because I work with a lot
yeah,
of companies that are hiring people, one thing that we notice is that companies went from we don't hire people remotely, right,
hmm
to oh we're just going to hire people. It's just going to be remotely right now. We don't know about the future. To we are hiring you and you can be remote, right?
yep.
So now that the companies hired people completely remotely,
Mm.
there's no coming back, right? Because now they can't just say now you're forced to come home, right? So
Yeah,
so I totally agree with you. People will be way more acceptable right
yeah,
now.
exactly. So, and to kind of continue on that train
Mm-hmm.
of thought is that I would say, if you to learn what if if the question was what to learn, I would say learn a way of, because this means that you change the way you work. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot just meet a colleague at the coffee machine and just like start chatting with him or her, and just say, hey, how's life? How's things? So I have this problem, can you help me with this programming issue or the architecture thing or this thing I'm trying to solve and everything. So you don't have this kind of thing. So, but then it means that you have to learn a new way of solving things and new way of collaborating. And actually, important thing, which is not technical but at least as important, is to taking care of your colleagues, and like making sure that they're actually doing well and
Mm-hmm.
okay and everything virtually.
Right.
You don't see them. You just need to kind of feel, and this, I don't know, call it empathy, call it whatever that might you want to call it, but actually cooperating, collaborating, and working together remotely is a important thing that is different from just seeing a really good colleague at the office and giving a hug and just asking how things are going. So
Right.
make sure that you actually pick up the phone, Skype, whatever, and they say hi to your Slack or whatever, say hi to your colleagues and talk to them. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a really important skill, which is absolutely not technical. And it kind of seems like I hit something, because there is like a
Yes.
huge wave of hearts and thumbs
Yes.
ups and everything that is just flying across my screen.
Right.
So it's great.
Yeah, you did get something there, man. Because you're totally right, right? A lot of a lot of times we just focus on we kind of end up just talking about work all the time, right? So I think part of the problem that people are having now is that it's not only that we're working remotely, but is that we are only working right remotely, right? And
And that
so
is actually a problem.
yeah,
That is actually the opposite of what many were afraid of, that people won't be working there, but they're actually only working. That is the problem.
right,
Because I
exactly.
mean, yeah,
Yeah, so we have less of the how things are going, and I know that because this year I had a crazy situation here because my wife, right when the pandemic started, my wife had a very serious illness, right, and then
oh,
she went the
I'm
whole
sorry.
time. Yeah, so I was so she went the whole time with, and she's just better now, right? So it's like, but this whole thing, I know that just very very close people they're kind of coming in my house for know about that, right?
Mm.
Because we can't, it's not something that we'll be talking all the time, and
Yeah,
so and it's exactly because it ends up being like we end up focused only on work, right? And so man, that's a totally agree with you because there's no way we can we can continue in a fully remote situation if we only work remotely, right?
We have to be, I mean, we're not computers, right? We are actually human. I mean, like it or not, we are. And there is this kind of, well, I mean, I don't know why I wouldn't like that. But anyway, we are human. So we need this kind of thing. So I would like to, at the end of this whole thing, I mean, first I would like to thank you all for all these questions and all these amazing comments and, stream of hearts and thumbs ups and everything.
But there's one comment here that says, a friend of mine said the productivity increased, but because people are only working.
And that's not going to last. And that's the problem, right?
That's the problem, yeah.
Because it's not that people don't want to, but it's just like people are not built that way. We really need the other soft things as well. So, it's going to be there, but it's kind of temporarily until it might start plummeting at some point. So you need to make sure. So back to the thing that I really want to leave you with all is a tiny little challenge. So the challenge is, it's tiny little to do, but it's very huge for many, I think. Try to start all the meetings and all these things as many as possible with a little chat and asking people kind of genuinely how they're doing, how they're feeling, and what's up in their lives, and what's happening and things like that. Spend 5-10 minutes, whatever, 15 minutes, go crazy. Spend a little bit of time doing that. If you haven't done that for quite some time either, do that. And that would be my challenge to you. So, and just make sure that you can just, tick off that you've done at least one of those meetings a day, or hopefully even more, Right. And I think that will make many feel much better, because you don't really know how people feel and what kind of things that they have, and they're, sitting at home, sitting alone, or sitting just within, short, small circle of people, maybe family, maybe friends, maybe something, it's this kind of support, and just kind of, hey, how are you? What's happening? This kind of thing is very, very much appreciated by many, I think. So tiny little challenge to you. Try to do it once a day, at least.
Awesome, man. Yes, awesome. So the chat here says challenge accepted. So perfect.
Yes. Okay. Mission completed.
Awesome, man. Okay, so Rustan, man, that's such an awesome conversation, right? And
enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
And that's the thing that I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to get friends so we can come and have a little conversation. And at least we don't only talk about work, right? We can talk a little bit about how things are going. So thanks very much, man. It was totally awesome.
Thank you. Well, yeah, just find me on Twitter. It's probably the most easiest way of finding me. And, ping me. Let's talk more about these things. I mean, it'll be just, I'll probably be most responsive on Twitter, and then just you'll find me. Just search for my name and I'll be there. Probably the same pictures you see as an avatar somewhere on the screen as well. So you'll recognize me, I guess. Yeah.
That's perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, man, thanks. It was totally an honor to have you here. Flaviano says, thanks, Rustan. Awesome talk. For that, set up this great moment. Thanks a lot. Okay. All right. So thanks, everyone. It was awesome to have you here. Rustan, was an honor to have you here. Mike Young, thank you all. Right. So thanks, everyone. It was great. And I hope to see you guys on TDC next week. Right. So Marcio saying thanks, Bruno and Rustan. That's awesome. So next week, TDC, there's a lot of free content for you. So register for the event, thedevelopersconference.com or ddevconf.com, right? So register for the event next week. It's going to be awesome to have you all there, right? And thanks for all this week. It was such an amazing week. Rustan, thanks for opening and closing our week. Thanks a lot, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so Rustan, let me just kind of make an invitation for everyone here, right? Rustan, I know you're busy, maybe not going to be able to do this, but everyone else, you can, once we finish here, you can go to the lounge, and there's several tables in the lounge, so you can just sit down in the lounge and have a conversation and do exactly what Rustan said, just here in the conversation. So, hey, Mokhtar. So Mokhtar has been asking questions here the whole week. So thanks a lot, Mokhtar, for being here. So thanks, everyone. It was awesome to be here with you. Go to the lounge and let's have a conversation.
I'll be there a little bit there as well. So see you there.
Cool. See you there, man. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.